Welcome to the Tradies in Business podcast. Join your host, Nicole Cox, as she dives into the real stories, tips, secrets, and stuff-ups from guests both inside and outside the trade world. Nick is here to help you break free from the grind, reduce money stress, and build a trade business that truly works for you. So grab a brew, put your phone on silent, and get ready to be inspired.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the Tradies in Business podcast. I am joined by another wonderful guest today. Gareth and I have just been having a wonderful conversation off air, which is my favourite part of these interviews, actually, is the little pre-chat that we have, and then there's a little after chat that we have as well. But I'd love for you all to join me in welcoming Gareth Davies today from Safe Assure. Gareth, thanks for being here.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, we are very clearly talking safety today and keeping our teams safe. We're talking a little bit compliance because at the end of the day, this is about compliance, but we're also talking about keeping you as a business owner safe and ensuring that you tick the boxes to help your team go home each and every day. Gareth, how did you come into the space of safety?
Yeah, actually, it was a weird one. My father's a civil engineer, and he was working for companies like John Hollands, was the CEO of a company called Golding Contractors based out of Gladstone in Queensland. So I grew up in the construction industry, but I probably knew I didn't want to be an engineer. Safety was actually my third preference to get into uni. I've got a daughter who's graduated this year, and we've gone through the course selections and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I just knew I didn't want to be an engineer like him, but like the industry. So yeah, it was my third preference. I was originally going to upgrade, and after doing a year of this course, and go on and become a teacher or a physio if I got good enough grades. But yeah, I finished grade 12 at 16. I didn't. Probably wasn't mature enough to go to uni, to be completely fair. Failed a lot, played a lot of rugby, and a lot of other sport, and just anyway, took a year off in my second year. Hadn't done well, but I guess one of the lessons I'd learned or been brought up to learn was once you start something, you finish it. So I took the few subjects I'd passed and continued on in year two, and got through my degree, and really actually enjoyed it. And there's obviously a strong teaching element and people-based element to it. So continued on and been doing it for 20-something years. I've got a Bachelor of Health Science, majoring in Health, Safety and Environment. So yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. Maybe don't tell anyone how long you've been doing it because it gives away your age a bit there, Gary.
I still feel young, so that's all good.
That's all that matters, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about what happened after you finished uni. Did you go into a job? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I finished my degree. I went and worked with a friend from my degree at Smorgon Steel Tube Mills, which was they make round hollow section, square hollow section like tube pipe, and worked there on a couple of interesting projects. One was installation of a new steel mill that they'd imported from Italy, actually. So it was understanding that mill, writing all the work instructions, working with a really experienced operator from the company, and actually getting in and getting your hands dirty, understanding what it was about, changing the roles to create the new profiles and every step through. So it probably taught me that systematic and pragmatic approach to health and safety, and taking expert knowledge from operators from the Italian team, but also managing the language barrier and their way of doing things, and translating it to Australian kind of conditions, and outputting a manageable, readable, identifiable document that workers could understand. And then moved on to that. So that finished. We moved on for the next 6 months to, they had a R&D project they were also doing on the same site. So I moved on to that, did the same process, and then I actually got asked to go and work for Komatsu, and I worked for 3 months in New Caledonia. So,
oh wow!
As a 22 or 3-year-old, my wife was 23-year-old, I guess. My wife was pregnant with in the first 3 months, our first child.
Wow.
I actually missed the first scan, which I shouldn't. It wasn't the best thing, but So I worked for 3 months in New Caledonia. Again, French colonized, so dominant French language, some English, but which was actually, again, another great experience. So I did that, came back to Komatsu in Brisbane, worked there for another 12 months or so after that. doing safety, quality, and environmental management
Mhm.
systems, and managing the main site in Brisbane, and then all the work that was done in southern half of Queensland. And then after that, moved on to a family-owned civil construction business because I wanted to get back into the construction space. And then probably after 5 years there, I got probably my big break and got employed by Hutchinson Builders,
Mhm.
which is at the time and probably still is maybe the top privately owned construction company in Australia. We then very quickly I moved from a team safety manager role into the national safety manager role, probably in the first 3 to 6 months, and
Mhm.
was there for another 3.5 years. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was a really big role. I got that role when I was 28. Um, the company was turning over 1.5 billion probably at the time.
Wow.
We grew a team of safety professionals to, I think at one point I was challenged because there was 53 of them, so which didn't all directly report to me. They reported to their team construction
Mhm.
managers and their
Mhm.
team safety managers and so on, and team leaders. But yeah, it was really good. We built a culture of yeah, professionals that wanted to try and drive safety performance on a company that I guess spread, like we're going to talk about today for my business, but a company that spread from replacing a door for a previous client or doing a very small renovation for them all the way to building a project worth $250 million kind of thing.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so yeah, so it was a very, yeah, and everyone in the business had kind of come through different ranks to get to that position. So they, yeah, some of them were tradespeople, some of them had done degrees, some
Mhm.
had worked all the way from being apprentice through to being team leaders. So they all had different experience. And I was trying to understand that and harness that and then get the best out of the safety performance. And I think one of the critical things is making sure that safety complements the production and the output. I mean,
Mhm.
we talk about safety first. We talk about, safety's got to be the number one priority. And look, I'm a safety professional, and I will say safety isn't first on its own. Like, obviously, you've got to have a business, you've got to make money, you've got to, you're doing this for a particular reason. Safety
Mm.
is integral in making sure that your business is successful.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, it should be equal to the other critical objectives of running a business, I think, which is what's important. I think that's why I always got good traction because it wasn't about, no, you can't do that. You've got to be safe, or you have to do it this way. It's about
Mhm.
how do we do that and make sure it's safe, I guess, is the critical thing. So, so yes, I was there for 3.5 years. Um, yeah, look, a few things changed. I wanted to go out and challenge myself. So I started Safe Assure in September 2014. So it's been 11 and a bit years now. It was about 4 months after I had my fourth child, who was very much a welcome surprise. But yeah, very, very valuable, obviously, part to round out our family of what we always wanted. So, so yeah, I had a lot of mates going, "What are you doing? You're in kind of a dream job, and now you're risking it all." And I said, "Well, you work hard, you do things for the right reasons, and
Mhm.
and generally things turn out the right way." So, yeah, look, it's definitely been difficult for the last 10, 11 years. At times, I should say, difficult at times. There's
Mhm.
there's ebbs and flows. There's swings and roundabouts. There's times where you're looking for when someone's going to pay your invoice so you can pay your bills. But yeah, it's definitely been a good journey.
Business isn't for the faint-hearted, is it?
No, that's right. That's right. I think the hard part is, yeah, small business particularly is
Mm.
probably the hardest space to be in the Australian economy. I reckon, even though it's such a big part of the economy.
Mm. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Gareth, okay, so at the time of recording, we're both Brisbane based. We've had some pretty horrendous tragedies in the last month here in the southeast corner. I would really like to ask the question that is asked of me all of the time when I bring this issue up with clients. How does a piece of paper keep someone safe?
Yeah, I think it's probably not so much just about the piece of paper. I think the reality is the piece of paper is one step in your overall compliance and your overall assurance framework. So I remember a lawyer we used to do a lot of work with. He always said to me, and hopefully I get this right, but he would rather go to court and try and defend a position if you've done the right thing.
Yeah.
and you don't have the paperwork filled out.
Hmm.
Then go to court and try and defend you because you got the paperwork filled out, but you never did anything right. So
Mm.
the piece of paper isn't the be all and end all, and I truly stand by that. I think the reality is we're humans and we make mistakes, we forget things, and the piece of paper or the process that sits on
Mm.
that piece of paper is the thing that helps remind you the steps you've got to take to ensure you achieve a safe outcome. So it might be creating a safe work environment, ensuring the step-by-step process is followed, the checklist that, yes, sometimes we'll check the box to, help remove your liability or achieve that final piece of compliance. But other piece of paper is not the be all and end all. And I guess as well now we're moving to technology and workflows and automated process where the piece of paper will be less and less, relevant, and
Mm.
the process will occur because you'll have gates within your workflow or technology that helps you achieve that. But the critical part is to still be mapping out your process flow in the first space. So yeah.
I think you've nailed it, and as you should, because it's what you do. But it is that process, right? It's about getting you thinking through the process. And I feel as though there has been. I've got many war stories from my own experience, even. But there's a continued pushback because people see it just as a compliance issue, as a piece of paper that needs to be signed that isn't actively doing anything. And sure, there might be a book or some paper or some digital files somewhere, but that's only part of the process. The process here is that process. It's the way we think about safety. It's the way we approach it as we go about our job and make sure that our team is safe. But it's very confusing, Gareth. Some of the language that is used is very hard to understand and doesn't necessarily keep anybody safe. How do we make it an impactful process that everybody can understand that actually creates safety for the people on the ground?
Yeah, I think for us, my team always give me a bit of grief because a few phrases I've learned along the way. One was actually from my Hutchie's days of "you don't know what you don't know." My
Mhm.
boss there used to say that all the time, and yeah, it's a common expression that everyone uses. We always talk about being pragmatic, so developing practical solutions and systems, pieces of paper that the audience that you're pitching to can understand. So we write reports at an executive level, we write reports for court, and the language we use there isn't the language we use when we write for the apprentice or the
Yep.
tradesperson. So, we've got to remember that particularly your audience are builders
Mm.
and tradies and labourers, all of the people that work in that hands-on space who generally are hands-on learners. So
Mm.
there's no point me writing a 20-page dossier on how to use a power saw. We
Yeah.
run an SOP on, with dot points, a couple of photos, some graphics around the PPE, and we go and, maybe not for a particular power saw, but for a drill press, let's say in a workshop, we write that and we stick that on the wall so they can quickly go, oh yeah, I've got to have my glasses on, I've got to have my hearing protection on.
Yes.
And they're the steps by steps I've got to follow. So
Yep.
we try and really make it as simple as possible and make it so that it's meaningful and there's a tangible outcome or process that people can pick up on easily, I guess, to
Mm.
implement. So yeah, definitely pragmatic and understand that the audience may not know what they don't know, kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Visuals are great. I think they work for everybody. And there's so many that must actually be quite challenging when you think about the different types of learners that we have in our team. Some of us need to read, some of us need it demonstrated, some of us need to look at the visuals. It's very different. How do you ensure that the safety plans and the SOPs and things that you put in place cover all those dynamic learners?
Yeah, it's difficult because obviously there's only so much you can do on that piece of paper, but there's a range of options for companies nowadays. There's, like I say, procedures and process. There's simpler SOPs. Obviously, we use safe work method statements for high risk construction activities, so they cover what they need to cover from a legislative point of view. There's micro learning, so there's short snippets of training that we can use. There's longer form online training. There's face to face. So there's a blended model of training and education that we can implement for people. I guess first and foremost, when we develop a system for someone, we want to make sure that we try and get face to face where we can. Obviously,
Mm,
geographically, that's not always possible. So we'll do a over the like a Teams or a Zoom meeting to kind of cover the process, show them how the system works, and do a trainer trainer type approach so that
mhm,
owners or the managers of that business can then go and try and embed it. And
mhm.
then what we try and do is we try and run a safety partnership type program where we're engaged, and particularly if they're local for us, but where we're going to the sites, we're spending time in a hands-on capacity with each of the workers in the business and the subcontractors, because part of this is obviously we're trying to obviously uplift the subcontractors as well for builders.
Yep.
If you're a subcontractor or a contractor yourself, yeah, you may still engage contractors at times. So we may try
Mm,
and we'll be trying to bring them up as well on the journey. But yeah, so we spend time with them to help them embed that knowledge or extract the knowledge from the procedure, the checklist, the process, and get them to have a real life example of how that works
mm,
for them.
mm.
So I think that's the critical thing, is trying to get that repetition of understanding through the process kind of thing. Because yeah, again, being visual, hands-on learners, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of us learn from mistakes, but we don't want that mistake to be catastrophic. So we want to
I know.
be on the job with them, showing them through. And like I say, going way back to my Smorgon Steel tube mills days, that's where the rubber meets the road. It's about really showing them, oh, you're using this saw, and people will go, oh, you're just the safety. I don't want to swear, but the words will get
You
called.
can swear.
Yeah. Um, so, and I think again, one of our other phrases is we want to be a coach, not a cop. So we're not there to
Yeah,
go,
yeah,
"Hey mate, put your bloody glasses on. You're an idiot."
yeah.
Because I just say to people, I say, "Look, this is what the process says. This is what your own procedure that you've signed tells you you have to do. Um, maybe you should put your glasses on." They go, "Ah, I don't need them. I'm just doing a little cut." And I said, "Look, mate, it's what it says. And the reality is, it's not my eyes. Like
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna walk away from here. I'm telling you, I've seen guys try and drive a concrete nail in above their head, and he lost 70% of his vision because the nail shot back and hit him in the eye. I've
Mhm,
seen people cut their thumb off. I've investigated dozens of fatalities.
mhm.
We've done it all, and that's the expert work we do nowadays. But yeah, it's not people. You've got guys within companies and particularly generational trades businesses, like I'm sure
Yes.
you've got in your clientele.
Yep.
And I'm not begrudging anyone, but the original owner or the father or whoever started the business, the mother, the grandparent goes, "Oh, I did this for 40 years and I never fell off a roof," or whatever. And sure, you know, as the sun comes up every day, someone in that business will do exactly what they said. It might not be today, it might not be in 5 years, but someone will, and that whole company's world will get flipped upside down. And not just
Mm,
first and foremost, the person that falls, life changes
mhm.
dramatically. Um, I've seen particularly one incident I got really close to because it was with a company I was working for. A worker fell through a skylight, 4 meters roughly to a concrete floor, bit of
Yes.
concrete rubble on the ground as well, but landed on that. Um, Acquired brain injury. Spent a long time in hospital. Never worked. He was 57, a really high quality carpenter. So he was one of the finishing carpenters that
Mhm.
would go around all different jobs for this company and do all the framing and door frames and all the finishing elements.
Yep.
His wife got a call that afternoon. She never went back to work again from that day forward. He didn't drive for 4 years. He went back and did some education stuff with young carpenters. So he actually ended up all right, but reality is he'd give it all back,
Well,
tomorrow.
of course.
It cost the company millions of dollars, which again,
Mm,
it was a serious, legitimate injury. There was no issue with any of that, and it was covered under workers' compensation. And we had deductibles and stuff we had to pay, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it changed lives. There's guys I still see who are on that job and that work still in construction, and they've stepped away from the roles they are in and went to lesser roles because they just didn't want the responsibility.
wow.
Some of them are still seeing counsellors. So yeah, pretty horrific stuff, and that's just one example of many. And it
Mm,
it changes lives. If it was a smaller business, they definitely would have gone under. Uh,
mm.
if he worked for himself, again, there goes all his income. Or
Mm,
if he had 4 or 5 blokes, would all be looking for new jobs. So I think the thing that and I've probably gone off track from your original question, was that,
it's okay.
you know, people ring us up and go, "Oh, I'm really worried about, this new industrial manslaughter law." And my kind of reaction is always, yeah, you should be. But first and foremost, if we protect the people that are working for you and we prevent the incidents from happening, all of the liability stuff and the litigation takes care of itself. Because if you don't get
Mm,
hurt, or you don't hurt anyone, there's not a lot of recourse that the legislator or the regulator might come to you and go, "Oh, again, your guys don't have the safety glasses on. Here's an on the spot fine." Yeah, that's a few grand. But again, it's not a big ticket thing that's going to end you. I think that
yes. Yeah.
if you take care of that, people like do it for the right reasons, which is everyone gets to go home at the end of the day in the
Mm,
manner that they came to work. If you do that, the rest kind of takes care of itself. But to
mm,
do that, you've got to have the right process, the right systems. Make sure you're ticking all the boxes from the documentation point of view, and
mhm,
then actually implement it.
mm. Gareth, can you run us through really simply? Let's talk about a subcontractor. What would they require to have in place?
Yeah. So, yeah, if we talked about, we've actually just done it for an electrician in Brisbane.
Mhm,
He has pretty much just does business to customer. So,
mhm.
some business work, doesn't do new construction work anymore. He stepped away from that just because he found it too, um, probably ruthless is the right, right answer. So,
Good answer.
um, yeah, so we've just done his stuff. He did have an incident, and one of his managers had a nasty incident, fell off some mobile scaffold they'd installed, but he'd actually engaged us, as sad as it was, about 2 weeks beforehand. So we were in the process of working on documents, had this incident. So it was kind of good timing that we'd started, bad time we didn't roll it out in
Mhm.
time, but yeah, you can't help that. But definitely someone that, yeah, has always, and even I've been on the phone to him recently, he's gone, "Actually, Gareth, I've got to go. My neighbour's got a tree lopper. I've got to go talk to him because this ain't right," kind of thing. So he's got
Yep.
the right mindset about, the standard you accept is the standard, or standard you walk past is the standard you accept.
Yep.
So anyway, we work on his documents. What we try and do, because of the nature of his business and the clientele that he pursues, we've written a safety plan. You could call it a safety system. A manual. You'd hear a range of different terms, but for a contracting business, yeah, a safety management plan that covers how the business operates. On a
Mhm.
day to day, his workers really only need to use safe work method statements for high risk construction work, which is, working at heights over 2 meters, working near on or adjacent to a roadway. For him, electrical work or live electrical work. Working their powered mobile plant. So those kind of things, he needs to have a safe work method statement. For everything else that's not deemed as high risk by the legislation, we would say he should have a safe operating procedure. We don't want to overcomplicate the swims with all that additional information. We don't want to have swims as long as your arm that you have to do on every single job, because the swims has to be task specific.
Yep.
Um, so we do a myriad of safe operating procedures, which is like manual handling, operating hand and power tools, trestles, ladders, all that kind of stuff that you use on a
Mhm.
day to day. And we get them to train in those and either refresh them, say, do a few of them every couple of months, or at
Mhm.
least a minimum every document is reviewed annually. So, however, we do that to try and make it manageable. But yeah, so they end up with a safety plan that sets the expectations for the company and defines how they're going to comply with the law.
Mhm.
We then have safe workman statements, safe operating procedures, and then we have all the forms and registers that sit adjacent to that. What the only probably difference between any of the contractors and then a builder, for example, would be builders are required for projects over pretty much all states except Victoria. Yeah, except Victoria, I think the threshold might be different, but principal contractors are appointed for any construction project over 250,000 in value.
Yep.
Um, and if it's, under the master builders or HIA, the contracts all stipulate the appointment of principal contractor. And then they have to have a work health and safety management plan for each individual project. So that's probably the only difference. we've written the one for the contractor to cover whole of business and day
Mhm.
and every day, and even written it so that they can go job to job to job on specific days,
Yep.
because they're not going to be generally sitting on one job for 3 weeks or 3 months or whatever. So build is slightly different, and we have our what we call our Resi Safe pack that covers builders, and it's set up that way. And then I guess if there's a higher level where any of your clients, particularly or anyone in the industry, wants to go to kind of the ISO standard. I don't know if you've heard of
Yes.
that, the international
Yep.
standard. Safety, quality, environmental being 45,001 for safety, 14,001 for environment, and 9,001 for quality.
Mhm.
Then we would go to it has to be a higher level kind of system. So there's a manual that sits over the top. It's a bigger document. There's more requirements you've got to achieve, and then filters down from there. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, and then obviously the thing is what we do with any client, and anyone should be doing this. Like I just talked about process before with technology, you've got to map out what your business needs are, what I call your conformance criteria. So, are you just trying to comply with the law? Are you trying to comply with ISO standards? Do you want to be federally safety accredited? Do any of your clients have specific requirements that you have to abide by? And
Mhm.
then once we know all of that, then we feed those inputs in to generate the right output for your business.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Gareth, obviously the gold standard with safety and why we do all of this, well, there's I guess a few prongs to it. First and foremost, it's to keep people safe.
Yeah.
Part of keeping people safe is keeping the business owners safe.
Yeah.
If an incident does occur, can you tell us how the or what the benefit is to having this in place should something go wrong from an employer point of view?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we talked about before, like the paperwork is one piece, and definitely, should something go wrong, it's a vital piece to have. So whether it's paper, technology, systems process, where it shows you've um, generated the system, I guess, complies with what the legislation.
Mhm.
Um, you've trained people in that system, and you have adequate instruction and supervision for workers throughout that process. So when an incident happens, I guess there's a few different trains of thought, but I'll talk you through how we do it. Ideally, we have relationships with clients, and as soon as an incident occurs, irrespective, and I would say to any of your listeners that if they don't have someone and an incident occurs, just call me. Like that's what you get
Mm.
for being part of our greater network is you get access to us, free of charge for a call and some immediate advice. That advice might be talk to this lawyer. It might be I'll send someone out from here.
Mhm.
It's going to cost you or whatever. But the initial and immediate response, taking aside obviously the response to the injured person or people,
Yeah,
that's priority number one.
of
But
course.
from that point forward, it's about how do we manage this situation so that the directors, the owners are protected through that process, and the paperwork is critical in that.
Mhm.
Even how you deal with the regulator, and this isn't to try and skirt away from what happened. It's just about managing the process so you don't which everyone hears on all the TV shows, don't incriminate yourself.
Yes.
Don't give away all the information that will then get used against you to prove that you've done something wrong. There's a legal, we work under what's called legal privilege. So if a lawyer engages us, so if I'll go back a step, if one of your clients rang me and said, Gareth, we've had an incident, I say, yeah, look, I can come investigate it now and help you manage the process. But I think what we should do, bring this lawyer, he'll then engage me, and then anything I do and anything I generate from that, and all your systems that I collect to do that investigation is covered under legal privilege. We give that to the lawyer controls, and then holistically you're in control of the conversation from there going forward. Obviously, there comes
Mhm.
a point where that stuff gets disclosed, but
Mhm.
we can manage that process through and ensure that you're also getting the right advice. Now, the lawyers we work with predominantly, I mean, we work with, definitely Queensland's and some of Australia's leading health and safety lawyers. One in particular has been in private practice for 4 years now and handles some very big matters. It's not like he doesn't do them, but plenty of fatalities. And he hasn't had one of his clients proceed to prosecution because of how we handle the process. So
Mm.
So it is a critical part to it, and I think any business owner would go, I'd rather get nothing, but I'd rather get a $10,000 fine than get a $150,000 fine, or
Absolutely.
and go through years of litigation and all this kind of
Mm,
stuff. So
mm,
it's just managing the process. Like I say, when someone's genuinely hurt and injured from being at work, there's the workers' compensation scheme, there's the civil scheme, which takes care of that person. The other part is the regulatory, litigation side where an employer can be prosecuted for breaches of the Work Health and Safety Act. So that's
mm.
the stuff we're trying to manage on the side. Obviously, during all that, we're making sure the individual is looked after and supported and the family supported, and we're giving advice on how to do that to help them through that very difficult process.
I think it'd be great to have someone to help you take the emotion away from the situation. Having been in a situation, nothing overly dramatic, thankfully. I have had a couple of incidents on site as a builder, and it's pretty dramatic to go through that process, particularly when you don't have that kind of support, Gareth, as I'm
Mm,
sure you've experienced. But you don't know what's coming, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do. Your mind is, of course, with your team member who's injured in one form or another. And I've also had incidents where I've had to march people off site because they just wouldn't follow the safety expectations of the company. Like it's a double-edged sword at
yeah,
times as an employer. But just having that support and someone in your corner, I think, is super beneficial, regardless of the incident that you're facing.
yeah,
Gareth, okay, I'm going to ask a different question. Now, I'm not sure whether too many of our listeners are in a similar boat to myself. However, maybe in asking this question, they will stop and think a little more about the safety standards they have in their business. I have 3 kids that are in the trades. They're young. They're probably a bit silly at times as well. How do I help them keep safe? Because their employers are not always putting safety at the top of mind. How do I, as a parent, help keep them safe at work?
yeah. Yeah, look, it's a difficult one. Like I said, I've got a 18-year-old who I don't know how, but she's a country fanatic. So she grown up in Brisbane her whole life, but loves the country music, loves the horses. 18th was a country theme. She wants to go and do a gap year. But we do a lot of work in the agricultural sector. I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'll pick the right farm,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah, you can't because I think you want them to go out and have learned experiences from
Yes.
other companies, other size businesses, other types of businesses, and obviously experience life generally.
Mm,
So it's difficult. I think the thing is what I will be trying to embed in your children's and it's not just children, it's young and inexperienced workers. Like that's the
mm,
group that we target as well. Is that yes, they don't know what they don't know. Sometimes they'll try and show initiative when
mhm,
maybe they shouldn't and they should ask a question. And so they progress down the point trying to be a good employee, hopefully, and take liberties that they shouldn't. So they end up with, yes, a nail in their eye, or they end up
mm,
with a chopped off thumb or whatever. So I think what I would be trying to educate your kids on and the young, inexperienced workers is it's okay to stop, think, and ask a question. If they work for an employer, if a young kid puts their hand up and goes, "Hang on, I don't understand this," or "I don't think this is safe," and they
mm.
get their head bitten off, or they get told to just get back to it. To me, my advice to my kid would be tools down, walk away. There's another job out there
Couldn't agree
somewhere, and
more.
we'll find you right on. So I think, yeah, they've just got to have. I mean, there's the whole Take Five. I don't know if you've heard of that, or
Mm,
again, your listeners have, but mining sector, a lot of the tier ones do a Take Five process,
mhm,
and I don't like. I understand the philosophy behind it. I don't necessarily agree with the approach and how it's implemented in a lot of places because
mhm,
I remember we were working for one of the big miners, and doing a construction project on one of the mines, and we had to achieve, I can't remember the number, it's 5 to 600 take fives a day based on the size of our workforce. So one before you started work, one after smoko, one after lunch, one anytime the thing changed, and it just became their KPI was they had to hit this number every day across the whole mine. I'm like,
mhm.
well, there's no value in it because guys just going tick, 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 throw it out. They're not actually
Exactly.
doing the intent, which is
Yeah.
stop, think, take action. So, yeah, definitely I'd be teaching them, yeah, have the courage to stop, and there's never a silly question. Like,
Mm,
ask the question, don't soldier on if you don't know what you're doing.
mhm.
Yeah, and obviously then all the other stuff, make sure their tools and equipment are all, inspected regularly, the guarding in place. Don't take, how many videos do you see now with grinders with no handles or guards on? And there'll be
All the time.
listeners going, "Oh, this Gareth bloke, what's he talking about?" You need to take off. So I'm a plumber. I need to take off the guard so I can use a 4-inch grinding wheel to cut inside a 100 mil pipe, so I can trim it down below the finished level of the slab. And seen it hundreds of times, but I've also seen those guys walking around like this with no fingers and stuff. So,
Exactly.
and again, they might do 100 of those cuts. All of a sudden, it jags on the concrete, throws back and slices through their femoral artery or something like that. So, yeah, it's trying to prevent them taking those shortcuts because they think it's the
Mm.
only way. So,
It is hard to maintain the standard. Speaking from a builder point of view, it can be very hard to maintain that standard when you're not necessarily on site with them 24/7 and you're dealing with some subcontractors at times. One of the incidents we had, funnily enough, was just pretty well that. Um, and did create a lot of stress and overwhelm for everybody involved. Same person that injured himself then went on to another site and wouldn't wear a hard hat when we were working at heights and there was a crane overhead.
mm,
Had to be marched off site, didn't never work for us ever again, and I think that that's the point, that you have to have a standard as a business owner that you won't back away from, and at times, there will be some really terse and uncomfortable conversations with people that might wanna, push on those boundaries, and yet I don't think there's anything more important or
mm,
practical.
yeah. And,
Gareth? Sorry, go on.
yeah, I was just going to say, I 100% agree. You got to have courage in your convictions, and you got to have values that you want to stand by. I would hope most people in today's day and age, safety and
Mm,
looking after people is one of their values, and however you decide to frame it. And we had something similar. One of a good consultant who had been coming along for 4 years and had great values, breached some of our ethical values. Wasn't even
mhm,
a safety thing, and you know we worked through it. He stayed for a week, and I said, "No, you got to go, mate, because
mm,
I can't be the boss you want me to be, and you won't progress in the company like you will hope to. And
mm,
so it's best you learn from this." And look, he's gone on to great things and settled down personally, and yeah, steady relationship, great job. He's been promoted, so hopefully that's the lesson he's learned and he's moved
mm,
forward. And yeah, like I say, you just got to have courage in your convictions about what you're trying to achieve and the standards and values you want to have.
I love that.
Mm.
Gareth, where can our listeners that are sitting there thinking, "Oh, shit, okay, maybe I need to do something about this before I land myself in trouble," where do they find you?
Well, anywhere. So we've got all the social channels, so Instagram, Facebook. Well, we've actually got a Safe As Vids page on TikTok, but it's not overly active at the moment. But definitely look, website www.safeassured.com.au. And then if they're in the professional space on LinkedIn,
Mhm,
we're pretty active on there. Got a very good following. Yeah, both Safe Assure page and my personal page. So, and any of those locations generally has my mobile number on it and
mhm.
or an email to get in touch with the business. But yeah, my email is just gareth@safeassure.com.au.
We'll make sure all of that is in the show notes for you folks.
No worries.
If you don't have safety systems in place for your business, now is the time. Do not delay. It is not a fun exercise to work through the problems that can arise if you don't have a system in place and something goes wrong. Today's the day to take action. Gareth, thanks so much for joining us and for your candor with some of your stories. What a shame you have so many of them. In an ideal world, we'd all be very safe and get to go home, and unfortunately, accidents do happen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is a shame, but yeah, at least if we can support people in the right way proactively first and then support after the incidents to make it the best possible outcome there, both
Mm,
for injured people and for business owners and co-workers, then yeah, we're doing the right thing.
brilliant. Thanks, Gareth. And
No
thanks for
worries.
listening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Tradies in Business podcast with Nicole Cox. Find out more about today's guest, tools for your trade business, and other cool stuff at tradiesinbusiness.com.au.